Yesterday was closing arguments in the E. Jean Carroll assault trial with Donald Trump. Of course, it was done without Donald Trump because even though he was given the opportunity to show up and testify, he chickened out at the last minute and decided not to do it. But E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, absolutely torched Donald Trump by reminding the jury what happened in that deposition video that they were shown a clip of last week. In that clip, they, of course, talked about the Access Hollywood tape where Trump said that rich and powerful men were able to grab women by the genitals, and he said, fortunately or unfortunately, history says they typically get away with it. And it was that specific sentence, fortunately or unfortunately, they get away with it historically. That is what Roberta Kaplan zeroed in on during her closing argument. She says, "Who would say fortunately to describe sexual assault? He thinks stars like him can get away with it." In a very real sense, Trump is a witness against himself. He knows he sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll. And then, of course, she brought up the fact that he didn't even bother to show up. The trial went on for 2 weeks. During that time, Donald Trump did a rally up in New Hampshire. He did a couple of interviews. He traveled over to Ireland and Scotland and played golf and told us last week he was coming back to confront E. Jean Carroll, and then, of course, never showed up to do that, even though the judge said, "I'll rearrange the whole trial schedule to get you on this witness stand so you can confront your accuser like you said you wanted to." But Trump refused to do it. Roberta Kaplan's closing arguments, the parts that we know, of course, there are no cameras allowed in there, so we're only getting from reporters that were present, and they did not report on everything that was said, but the parts that we know were pretty damning against Donald Trump. And we also know that his lawyer, Joe Tacopina, did a pretty crappy job. Let me read you part of Tacopina's closing. "Miss Carroll abused the system. She brought a case for money and victimized real rape victims, exploiting their pain and suffering. We cannot let her profit from her abuse of the process." He then continued, "How do you prove a negative? If Donald Trump had come, what could I have asked him? About some unknown date? This is a civil case. They could have called Donald Trump, but they didn't. They just want you to hate him enough." No, you didn't want Donald Trump to testify because you knew that he would blow everything up if he were up there on the stand, and you know that the lawyers for the plaintiff, would absolutely dismantle him pretty brilliantly. That's why Donald Trump didn't show up. It's not because you can't prove a negative. Look, I've talked about that plenty of times. You can't prove a negative. But the other part of that, Joe Tacopina, is the fact that you did not prove that what they said was not true. Just because you can't prove a negative in court doesn't mean that you can't dismantle their arguments against your folks. You didn't bring any witnesses. You didn't bring any evidence. You failed spectacularly on cross-examination. You did not do your job as a lawyer to prove your client's innocence. So that is on you. It's not because you couldn't prove a negative. It's because in this particular case, you were a pretty bad lawyer. So closing arguments, I got to give that round to E. Jean Carroll's legal team. The jury is going to be given their instructions now. Deliberations may begin today. It may not start till tomorrow, depending on how long that takes. But I would bet before the end of the week, we're going to have a verdict, and it's probably not going to be the one that Donald Trump wants. This is Hattie. Hattie wants to know why you have not subscribed to our channel. You obviously like our videos, so do us a favor and subscribe.